Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to do what we love doing, taking these different ideas you've sent us, seemingly unconnected, and, well, seeing what connections pop out.
Finding those aha moments, hopefully.
Exactly. And our mission today centers on Walter Russell. He was an artist, a visionary.
Right. And he had this incredibly intense 39-day experience.
His cosmic illumination.
Yeah. And out of that came these really profound ideas about reality itself.
So we're going to explore those ideas, the universe being mental, rhythmic, light, thought, and see how they sort of echo in ancient Eastern thought and even some modern science.
It's a fascinating journey. Russell saw the universe as fundamentally, alive with thought and rhythm.
Yeah.
Matter wasn't static stuff for him.
No.
No, it was more like light that's been conditioned, slowed down.
Okay.
A temporary expression of this divine creativity. And it all revolves around this principle we call rhythmic balanced interchange, around a still point.
A still point. Okay. Quite a picture.
It is a huge picture. So let's try and trace some of those threads into these other areas you mentioned.
Sounds good. Let's start way back with ancient Eastern wisdom. Vedanta comes to mind first for me. Can we unpack that connection?
Absolutely. Vedanta has this concept, Maya.
Right, the world of appearances.
Exactly. The world of names and forms we experience through our senses. It's often described as an illusory manifestation of Brahman.
Which is the ultimate reality, pure consciousness.
Precisely. Pure consciousness. Now think about Russell's idea of matter being crystallized light.
Okay.
Don't you see a parallel?
What?
Both perspectives suggest that what we think of as solid, separate things are maybe temporary states.
Like a conditioning of something more fundamental.
Exactly. Whether you call it consciousness or purely energy, the forms are dynamic, changing expressions of this deeper unity.
So this idea that the physical world isn't fixed, it's always in flux.
Yes. And maybe, just maybe, our anxieties about life being fleeting, maybe they touch on a fundamental truth about reality itself.
Huh. That's a perspective. Thinking about anxiety that way makes you wonder, okay, what about Buddhism? Where do Russell's ideas resonate there?
Well, with Buddhism, two key ideas jump out, sunyata and anicca.
Sunyata. Emptiness.
Right, but it's crucial to understand it's not a void. It's
Yeah.
emptiness of inherent existence. Nothing exists independently on its own.
Okay, and Annika?
Universal impermanence. Everything changes. Everything is in flux.
Always.
Always. And Russell's view of matter as these constantly shifting states of conditioned light and perpetual rhythmic motion.
Fits right in.
It really does. It aligns perfectly with the idea that nothing is fixed, everything is cycling, becoming, and unbecoming.
It's like they're describing the same dance.
Exactly. This shared emphasis on impermanence, on cycles, is a really strong parallel. It's almost like Russell tapped into that ancient understanding through his own direct experience.
Constant change, no fixed self. It's striking how his vision echoes those core Buddhist insights. Okay, let's move to Taoism, another incredibly deep tradition. What about connections there?
Taoism offers some fascinating parallels too. Think about the Tao itself.
The way, the source.
Right, that ultimate sort of indescribable principle behind everything. It feels very similar conceptually to Russell's universal one, doesn't it?
That underlying source beyond our full grasp. Yeah.
And then you have yin and yang.
The complementary opposites.
Exactly. That dynamic interplay, creating balance and harmony. It mirrors Russell's rhythmic polarity and balanced interchange beautifully. It's that constant dance.
Right.
And think about prana or chi.
Life force energy.
Yes, the vital energies in Eastern thought. You can see a link there to Russell's universe being fundamentally alive, full of dynamic energy, his fundamental electric and magnetic forces constantly at work.
Like these traditions were describing a living, energetic cosmos.
Just as Russell did, in his own language.
So it really feels like Russell wasn't just inventing things out of the blue.
Not at all.
It's more like he rediscovered or rearticulated these ancient truths.
That's the big takeaway here, I think. These ancient traditions give his ideas a historical and philosophical context. They suggest he might have tapped into something very old, very fundamental, about a dynamic, non-dual reality.
It adds a certain weight, doesn't it? Seeing these echoes across cultures and time.
It really does. It suggests his vision, while unique in its expression, resonates with long-held human insights.
Okay, we've journeyed through ancient wisdom. Now let's take a sharp turn into neuroscience. This feels like a completely different world.
It might seem that way.
But are there any surprising overlaps when we look at the brain, at consciousness?
This is where it gets really intriguing, actually. We're learning so much about the mind-body connection now.
Like the placebo effect.
Exactly. The placebo effect, the nocebo effect, too,
Mhm.
where belief can cause harm and psychosomatic illness.
Where mental states cause physical symptoms.
Right. These all clearly show that our thoughts, our beliefs, our emotions, they have a real tangible impact on our physical bodies.
Okay, I see that. But how does that connect to Russell's grand cosmic vision?
Well, think about his big idea. Cosmic thought patterns solidifying into matter.
Right.
Isn't what we see with placebo and psychosomatic illness a kind of micro-level analogy? Our individual thoughts influencing our physical form.
Huh. I hadn't thought of it quite like that. An analogy at the individual scale.
Exactly. It suggests that consciousness, even on our level, has a power to shape the physical. It makes you wonder, doesn't it?
It does. If our individual thoughts affect our bodies, what about collective consciousness? Could that shape the world in a bigger way, like Russell suggested?
That's the kind of question it raises. It's a compelling thought.
It is. And speaking of consciousness, the hard problem, that always felt like a major hurdle for just explaining everything purely physically.
Absolutely. The hard problem of consciousness, the question of why we have subjective experience.
Why does it feel like something to be me or to see red or feel joy?
Exactly. Why aren't we just, complex biological machines processing data? It's a massive challenge for a purely materialist worldview.
And does that challenge open doors?
I think it does. This gap in our physical explanation opens possibilities that align more with Russell and with Eastern views, too. Views where consciousness is perhaps more fundamental.
Not just a product of the brain firing.
Right. Maybe it's the ground of being itself.
So neuroscience doesn't prove Russell, obviously.
No, not in a direct scientific way.
But it highlights the limits of just looking at the material stuff. And maybe keeps the door open for a momental reality.
Precisely. It offers these intriguing points where the standard model feels incomplete. It challenges the assumptions that might make us dismiss Russell's core ideas out of hand. It forces us to consider maybe there's more going on than just physical processes.
Okay. From the brain's inner workings, let's zoom all the way out. Modern physics, the cosmos. This feels like another huge leap.
It is, but again, there are resonances. It's fascinating how quantum mechanics describes the very foundation of reality.
Not as solid little balls bouncing around.
Not really. It's more about waves, fields, probabilities. Particles are almost like temporary disturbances or excitations in these underlying energy fields.
Existing as possibilities until observed. That
Yeah,
kind of thing.
Exactly. They exhibit both wave and particle behavior.
Yeah.
Now, conceptually, doesn't that resonate with Russell's universe being wave-based, built from conditioned light?
Yeah. Less about fixed things and more about dynamic patterns of energy.
And his idea of space not being empty, but a generative medium.
Right. Where forms arise from. It does sound conceptually similar. Like the universe is less a collection of objects and more an interconnected energy web.
That's a good way to put it. And then you have things like cymatics.
Ah, the patterns vibration makes in sand or water?
Yes, it's a direct visual demonstration of vibration creating form. How cool is that?
It's amazing.
And lines up perfectly with Russell's view of a universe shaped by vibrations and rhythms. It's a tangible example.
Okay.
And even in cosmology, think about the vast cycles, stars being born and dying, galaxies moving.
Huge cosmic rhythms.
Yes. And there are even theoretical models of a cyclical universe, expanding, contracting, maybe repeating. That echoes Russell's law of cosmic cycles, his idea of a breathing universe.
So physics, using its own complex language and math, seems to be describing a reality that's much more dynamic, interconnected, and maybe less solid than we usually think.
Absolutely. But, and this is crucial, we have to be clear about the distinction.
Right. Physics isn't proving Russell's specific model.
No. The methodologies, the frameworks, the language, they're very different from his intuitive philosophical approach. Physics doesn't validate his work as a scientific theory in the standard sense.
But the concepts.
The conceptual resonance is striking. Physics describes reality at its deepest level as dynamic, energetic, interconnected, probabilistic, patterned by vibration.
All things that echo Russell's vision.
Exactly. So physics offers this potential lens, a different language, for maybe understanding aspects of the kind of universe Russell perceived.
Okay. So we've gone through ancient philosophy, neuroscience, modern physics, this whole journey. What's the synthesis? What's the big picture when we put it all together?
I think the key is not to look for a perfect one-to-one match or scientific proof in the way we normally think of it.
It's more about convergence.
Exactly. A fascinating convergence of ideas from very different ways of knowing. Eastern wisdom gives us profound philosophical depth, centuries of looking inward at reality and consciousness.
Yeah.
Neuroscience shows us the tangible power of the mind over the body and bumps up against the deep mystery of consciousness itself.
Right, the hard problem.
And modern physics reveals this incredibly energetic, wave-like interconnected reality at the very base of everything.
So it's like philosophy, brain science, physics. They're all different windows looking out onto the same landscape.
That's a great analogy. And when you put those views together, Russell's ideas, which came from this very intense personal experience, start to feel less like, some isolated fantasy,
But
more like a possible articulation of fundamental truths about the cosmos, just seen from a very unique, perhaps more direct perspective.
it makes you wonder if his illumination was a kind of direct perception of these things that science and philosophy grapple with more indirectly.
It really does make his experience seem potentially profound in that way.
Yeah.
He might have had this intuitive glimpse that others are reaching for through more methodical means.
A glimpse of the underlying reality.
Precisely. There's a quote I came across from someone named Zoran that seems to capture this really well.
Oh, yeah.
It goes, "The scientist measures the ripple with precision. The mystic feels the current with their soul. The dragon sees the ocean in its entirety."
Wow.
Russell glimpsed the ocean and tried, with frantic hands, to draw the ripples he saw within it.
That really paints a picture. Measuring ripples versus seeing the whole ocean.
It speaks to those different ways of perceiving, doesn't it?
It really does. Okay, so the main takeaway from this whole deep dive is this intriguing resonance, this echo between Walter Russell's intuitive vision and insights from ancient wisdom, modern science.
Yes, suggesting a universe that's maybe far more interconnected, more dynamic, maybe even more fundamentally mental than our everyday assumptions allow for.
Definitely gives you a lot to chew on.
It does. And that leads to a final thought, really, for you to take away and consider.
Okay.
How might your own perspective shift on your own life, on existence itself, on what's real, if you started to really internalize this idea of the universe as some fundamentally rhythmic, interconnected, maybe even conscious in some way?
What are the implications if these converging ideas are pointing towards something true?
Exactly. What does that mean for how we see ourselves and our place in this cosmic dance?
Yeah.
Certainly something worth pondering.